In a distant corner of the galaxy, where stars blinked like forgotten secrets and space stations floated like islands on a silent ocean, one such station named Luma 9 held within its metal bones the quiet hum of daily work and hidden truths buried. Deep below blinking panels and artificial skies, a young human researcher named Adam walked through the sterile halls of Luma 9 every morning, carrying data tablets and worn notes. Filled with research on alien biology, he worked in the xenobiology division, surrounded by creatures from dozens of worlds, all cloaked in the illusion of peace and progress. Yet, Adam felt something wrong, something beneath the surface, something no one wanted to speak about. He had noticed strange things over the last few months: cargo deliveries from unregistered Earth colonies, data logs showing missing persons never reported, news streams oddly silent about the rural areas that once sent regular updates. The station I gave standard responses when he inquired. Delays, power failures, incomplete data. Nothing made sense, and no one seemed to care. One night, while cross-referencing supply chains for a research project, Adam found a restricted route coded in red, passing through a sector near Earth where no legal trade should exist, as access should have been denied. But the system glitched just long enough to let him see a shipment labeled Organic Extract Type HN9, destination unknown, its point of origin a settlement in the southern plains of Earth, now marked abandoned due to climate collapse. Adam's heart tightened as he sat alone in the lab, cold artificial light falling across his tired face. He searched the archives for any mention of HN9, but nothing official appeared, only encrypted logs. Buried deep in outdated systems, he dug further, bypassing layers of clearance, until he found a fragment of a communication between alien traders. The message read: shipment, prime, full, nectar yield, approved, prepare for feast. The word nectar echoed in his thoughts like a warning bell, loud and unfamiliar. He shared his findings with a maintenance worker named Tula, a low-ranking alien who had once shown kindness during a station lockdown. Tula cleaned waste units and handled small repairs, but he had connections in forgotten parts of the ship where cameras never worked and secrets could survive. Tula listened quietly to Adam's story, and then without a word led him through the twisting lower levels of Luma 9 into an old data vault. Sealed since before Adam was born. Inside the vault, the air was stale and warm machines buzzed faintly, but the central core still lived. Tula accessed it through manual override and showed Adam a hidden archive of culinary records, not public, not scientific, but part of something far older. It documented food rituals across the stars, dishes made from living beings, delicacies crafted through methods no human would accept. And there, in the section marked Elite Pleasures, was a page titled Human Nectar. Adam stared at the text, images and chemical maps spread across the screen. The file described a rare compound found in certain human glands, released only under extreme emotional stress, particularly fear and despair. The compound was refined into a glowing liquid treasured by high-ranking aliens for its euphoric effects. Consumed during private banquets and elite gatherings, its rarity made it valuable, but its method of harvest made it illegal under galactic law. He scrolled through more documents and saw references to human farms, emotion chambers, fear extraction cycles. The language was clinical and detached, as if describing cattle, not people. He felt sick, yet he kept reading, and with every line the horror deepened. Thousands, maybe millions of humans had been taken without records and used like ingredients in recipes no one dared to name aloud. He asked Tula why no one stopped this, and the answer was silence, followed by a slow nod toward the stars. It meant too many were involved, too much money, too many powerful names. Adam returned to his quarters with the data copied into a hidden drive. Sleep would not come that night, nor would it return easily in the days to follow. He thought of his home, his family, the people of Earth who lived simple lives unaware of the shadow above them. He remembered the stories of missing ships, unexplained disasters, villages swallowed by storms that never made sense. Maybe they were not accidents, maybe they were harvests. And so Adam made a choice. He would not look away. He would not let this secret remain buried. He would follow the path no matter where it led, no matter How dangerous no matter who tried to stop him, because if even one more life could be saved, then the risk was worth it. And if the galaxy needed to hear the truth, then he would be the voice that carried it across the stars. This was not about science anymore. This was not about curiosity. It was about justice, about facing the darkness behind. Polished smiles and glowing screams about lifting the veil over a truth too cruel to ignore. And for the first time since he arrived on Luma 9, Adam knew his purpose, and it burned brighter than any sun he had ever seen. Now the journey had begun. And there was no turning back. Adam began his days with quiet urgency, and his nights with sleepless thoughts. The images he had seen inside that forgotten data vault followed him like shadows in every corridor of Luma 9. He moved carefully, speaking little, watching much, knowing that even walls had ears, and the wrong words spoken to the wrong person could mean disappearance. He trusted no one except Tula, who now stood beside him in silent support. Tula guided Adam through narrow maintenance tunnels and hidden decks long left unused. These places were outside the station's main sensors, and inside them secrets flowed freely. Here whispers lived and truths once buried breathed again through old cables and dusty terminals. Tula introduced Adam to an old terminal used by smugglers long before the station turned into a research hub. Using it, Adam gained deeper access into underground data streams, still pulsing between trade hubs and private clients. What he found left no room for doubt. The dark trade in human nectar was not a rumor or a forgotten crime. It was a living network, a thriving shadow market stretching across systems from the core to the edge of mapped space, disguised under coded names and disguised as agricultural supply chains. The transport logs led from isolated Earth colonies to refinery stations orbiting distant stars. Each log ended with simple words: harvest complete. Adam cross-checked names of missing persons with those transport logs. The matches were undeniable. Every entry echoed lost faces once seen in holiday photos or family calls, now erased from memory and marked as expired stock. He stared at lists with shaking hands, realizing that the galaxy had turned his kind into a commodity traded for pleasure, served at parties, their suffering bottled as luxury. He found a sublayer in the culinary archives labeled Elite Indulgences. It listed dishes forbidden by law but praised in private among those who ruled the galaxies. On the first page was human nectar, described as the rarest liquid in the known universe. Its effects were said to unlock dreams, its aroma compared to stardust and rain. It was not consumed for hunger, but for the way it changed the mind, elevated emotion, connected one to memories long buried. Only a few drops were needed, and they could only be gathered under the most extreme emotional pressure. Adam could no longer stay still. He began recording everything, every document, every image, every trade log he collected them into hidden files disguised as research notes on alien insects. He wanted to scream, but instead he prepared and waited. One day Tula brought him a small chip containing a name and a location. The name was of an alien chef known only as the Maker, and the location was a processing vessel called the Opal Maw, floating beyond regulated space, a place where the nectar was refined and stored before reaching the markets. No one spoke of it in official circles, but Tula had heard whispers among waste haulers and forgotten cleaners, those who saw things others never noticed. The Opal Maw was more than a factory. It was a floating cathedral of cruelty, where the line between biology and cuisine was erased, where screams were not noise but part of the recipe. Adam felt a cold fury rise within him, and with it a memory of his younger sister, who had vanished during a storm cycle on Earth many years ago. No remains were found, only debris and a hollow report calling it a weather incident. Now he wondered if she had been taken, if her final breath had become someone's expensive indulgence. He tried reaching out to Earth authorities, but the embassy at Luma 9 delayed his requests, offered empty apologies, and finally cut contact. His messages returned unread, his calls blocked. It became clear they knew more than they admitted, and that silence was their chosen defense. Adam realized then that those in power on Earth had accepted the trade they had been bribed or blackmailed into looking. a way they allowed the harvest to continue in exchange for technology prosperity or false peace. They sold their own people for alien favor and labeled it diplomacy. He knew now that he could not stop this alone. But he also knew that every truth begins with one voice, and so he made a decision to release part of the evidence across public networks to let even a sliver of the truth reach open eyes. He uploaded visuals of the Nectar labs, maps of trade paths and names of vanished people, but within minutes the transmission was blocked, accounts suspended, and data purged as if it had never existed. Something had changed. Whispers grew louder. Strangers looked at him with new interest and danger. Walked closer. He received a message, without name or source, offering help and warning in equal measure. Join us or vanish, it said, with coordinates to an abandoned freight ring orbiting a dead moon. There, he met others, humans and aliens, alike wearing plain clothes and guarded eyes, people who had lost someone or discovered too much. They called themselves the Flame, and they had been fighting the Nectar trade from the shadows for years, without support, without praise, but with purpose. They welcomed Adam not as a hero, but as another light in the dark. They shared stories of raids on harvesters, of refugees smuggled to safety, of small victories won through risk and loss. And now with Adam's data, they had what they needed to strike harder, to reveal the location of the Opal Maw and expose the system. Feeding on pain, for the first time Adam felt the weight of something real. Not just horror, but hope. Not just grief, but grit. People were waking up to the truth. And with every whisper, with every hidden file, with every life, save the darkness grew thinner. Now the Flame prepared for a mission like no other, a strike at the heart of the hidden trade, a chance to burn the lie and show the stars what the truth really looked like. Adam looked out at the black beyond the windows of the ring and whispered a promise, not to his allies, not to the stars, but to those who had been lost. Your suffering will not be forgotten. Your stories will be heard. Your stolen light will become fire. Journey was no longer about knowing the truth. It was about ending the horror that truth had revealed. The space around the dead moon stood still as if holding its breath, while inside the old freight ring, the members of the Flame gathered in silence. The cold metal walls echoed with footsteps and distant engine hums, but the real noise was made by minds planning something bold, something dangerous, something that could finally pull the mask off a galaxy built on hidden hunger. Adam stood among them, surrounded by faces filled with quiet fire. Some were old soldiers, some were runaway engineers, others were survivors of vanished towns or failed colonies. Each carried a pain too deep for words and a purpose sharp enough to cut through fear. They listened as Adam showed them everything he had uncovered, from trade routes to the structure of the Opal Maw, from biological data on the Nectar to the political networks that protected its flow. The plan was simple but deadly. They would reach the Opal Maw in stealth, breach its security, gather proof, and release it across all major lines in real time. No more hidden files. No more secret messages. They would shout the truth loud enough that no wall could block it and no power could silence it. They would let the galaxy see the price of pleasure and the horror behind its sweet taste. But before the team could move, they needed one more thing, a signal boost strong enough to cut through the interference and reach the open networks protected by the galactic law grid. For that they needed access to an ancient satellite relay abandoned near a collapsed planet. The relay had been untouched for years, surrounded by debris and mining wreckage, but its core still functioned. Adam joined a small crew as they boarded a stealth shuttle and flew into the broken remains of forgotten mining fields. They moved with precision, dodging patrol drones and magnetic storms, until the relay appeared before them like a metal ghost floating in space. Its lights faint, its body cracked, but its signal node still pulsing like a fading heartbeat. They landed on its outer ring and entered through a side hatch, using old manual tools to unlock frozen doors. Inside, dust floated like mist and cables hung like vines from the ceiling. But the core waited untouched. They activated it, rerouted its power, and linked it with their data feed. Once the message would begin, this node would carry their truth to every listening ear across the stars, returning To the ring, they met others preparing for the mission, forging tools. Hiding weapons, charging quiet engines, the Flame had only one ship. Capable of reaching the Opal Maw without detection, a stolen freighter disguised as a waste. Hauler, its name scratched out, its past forgotten, now reborn as the carrier of fire inside. The freighter Adam found a corner near the engine room and sat. Alone, holding a small photo of his sister, the edges worn, the colors faded. He remembered her laugh, how she danced in the rain. How she believed in kindness, in stars. Now he carried her memory like armor, not heavy but firm, not sharp but strong. She had not vanished into nothing. She had become a reason to fight, a reason to change. As departure time neared, the leader of the Flame, a man named Nolan, addressed the team, his voice steady, his eyes full of storms. He spoke not of glory or victory, but of meaning, of standing against a truth too long ignored, of choosing to be the spark instead of waiting for the fire. He reminded them that this mission might fail, that some might not return, but if even one world opened its eyes, then their fight would echo forever. The ship left the ring with no ceremony, moving like a ghost through the void. Each person aboard carried more than tools and tasks. They carried memories of loss and moments of hope. They carried the weight of knowing and the power of choosing to act. As the Opal Maw came into view, it appeared not like a factory or ship, but like a temple of darkness. Its shape was curved like a shell, its walls pulsed with soft green light, and around it floated smaller vessels. Silent and still waiting for the next delivery of fear, the freighter approached, using false credentials and dead codes. The guards barely checked their signal, the disguise held, and the ship was cleared for docking. Adam's heart raced as the docking clamps locked and the doors opened, revealing a tunnel of light and silence inside the maw. The air felt thick, as if soaked with sorrow. The walls were lined with control panels, glowing with strange symbols. Machines hummed quietly, and the smell was metallic, with a hint of something sweet, something that did not belong. The teams split into groups. Some went to the central lab, others to the holding chambers. Adam joined the group headed for the processing core, where the nectar was refined. He walked through a corridor lined with observation windows, each showing scenes too cruel to be real. Humans in stasis pods, eyes wide in terror, pulses rising, machines measuring emotional spikes and extracting the precious liquid drop by drop. He wanted to look away, but he forced himself to see every detail, every screen, every gauge, every symbol that could help expose this crime. They reached the core and placed hidden transmitters linked to the relay. The moment the signal was activated, every image, every sound, every data point would be streamed live to the galaxy. But something changed too. Soon the alarm lights flashed and a robotic voice began a lockdown protocol. Someone had noticed. Someone had seen through the mask guards rushed in with stun weapons and armored suits. A fight broke out, blasters screamed, and sparks filled the air. Adam and his team fought with tools and makeshift weapons. They had no heavy arms, only courage and desperation, but they held the room long enough to complete the upload. The signal light turned green, and the relay confirmed transmission across all open channels. Message had begun, the truth had been set free, and nothing could stop it now. Adam reached the command console and whispered a promise once more, this time not just to his sister, but to every soul harvested, to every cry lost in silence. We are not ingredients. We are not products. We are not yours to consume. Behind him, the room shook as explosions echoed through the maw. The Flame had planted charges to destroy the ship. Once the mission ended, the team began retreating, wounded and breathless, but alive. They rushed to the docking port, their freighter waiting, battered but ready. Opal Maw burned behind them, a giant shadow falling into itself as fire danced across its walls. Adam watched through the viewport, eyes filled with pain and pride. The maw was gone, but its secret was no longer hidden. Now the galaxy had seen, and the galaxy would answer. The stars around the freighter seemed quieter than usual, as if the universe had paused to listen, while the signal continued to spread across systems, through trade hubs, communication satellites, space colonies, and even deep space ships carrying passengers who had never heard the words human nectar, or known of the hidden horror behind Galactic Cuisine. Every screen that caught the signal showed the same footage. The same images of cages, wires, machines, drawing fear into vials and rooms, echoing with silent pain. People across the stars watched in disbelief, some turned away in shock. Others stared with frozen expressions, and many began to ask questions that had never been allowed before. What is this? Where is this? Who allowed this? And why was it hidden for so long? The truth moved faster than silence ever could, and it reached places no one expected, from the luxury towers of the core worlds to the broken minds of the outer rims. The truth lit fires in every corner. Back inside the freighter, the members of the Flame treated wounds and repaired systems. The explosion of the Opal Maw had damaged their engines, and several of the crew had suffered injuries, but they had survived, and more importantly, they had succeeded. Adam sat in the small medbay, holding a cracked data tablet in his hands, the signal log still active, still broadcasting until the last fragment of evidence reached the last open relay. He felt no relief, only a growing weight, because the truth was now free, but justice was not yet served. Tula entered a room with a quiet step and handed him a small energy drink from the storage cabinet. Her eyes said more than her words could, and Adam nodded in thanks, knowing they were thinking the same. The Maw was gone, but the trade was bigger than one ship. The system was older than one network, and those who ruled it were not so easy to defeat. Within hours, the Flame began receiving encrypted messages from people offering help, support, data, and even confessions. Some came from low-ranking workers who had handled transport without knowing the full truth. Others came from former scientists who once worked on Nectar extraction and could no longer live with what they had done. And then there were messages from victims rescued years ago, hidden in refugee zones, afraid to speak until now. Their voices added to the growing storm. One message changed everything. It came from a source claiming to be inside the Trade Council itself. An anonymous sender using the name Greylight shared documents proving that the Council had known about the human nectar for decades and had not only ignored it, but protected it, allowed it to grow in secret in exchange for influence and control. This revelation confirmed the worst fears of the Flame. The rot was not limited to black markets. It reached into the heart of galactic law itself. Adam and the Flame knew what had to be done. They began organizing a second mission, not a stealth operation, but a direct strike. They would expose the Council members involved, confront the systems built on this cruelty, and push for justice, not with whispers, but with bold action. They contacted rebel cells, political activists, exiled journalists, and independent fleets who had once resisted other injustices. Together, they formed a united front, small but determined, ready to force change. As this movement grew, the Trade Council responded not with apology, but with suppression. They declared the footage fake, labeled the Flame as extremists, and sent enforcement units to raid their known hideout. Stations that hosted the transmission were fined or shut down, and anyone who spoke too loudly faced threats or worse. But the tide was turning, and suppression only added fuel to the fire. The Flame launched small missions to rescue remaining captives from hidden farms and stations left behind after the Maw's fall. Each rescue revealed more details about how deep the trade went. Entire sections of space once marked as dead zones were actually part of the hidden supply chain. Humans from lost Earth colonies had been used as resources, their lives reduced to numbers in cold files. One of the most emotional rescues happened on a forgotten moon orbiting a dying star. The team found a facility disguised as an abandoned research lab. Inside, they discovered hundreds of stasis pods, each containing a human frozen in time, their bodies intact, their minds scarred by the process. But many still alive. Among them was a girl who matched the description Adam had given to the Flame long ago. She was older now, thinner and pale, but her eyes opened slowly and locked onto his with a spark of memory that needed no words. It was his sister. Her name, whispered through cracked lips, became the heartbeat of the team. Her survival became a symbol that this fight was not just about revenge or exposure. It was about bringing people back, about restoring what had been stolen. News of her rescue spread quickly, and her story touched hearts across planets. No longer could the Council Hide behind lies or bury the truth in quiet shadows. Public protests erupted in major cities. Alien species marched beside humans, holding signs and chanting for justice. Cultural leaders spoke against the council, and artists created powerful works. Showing the cruelty of the Nectar trade, the galaxy had opened its eyes, and what it saw could not be unseen. Still, the council refused to bend. They called the growing resistance a threat to stability, and began preparing for war. Elite guards known as the Silence were deployed to intercept flame ships and disrupt communication lines. Adam and the leadership team of the Flame met to plan their final move, a broadcast that would reach the entire galaxy in one moment. Live unfiltered, undeniable. It would name every leader, every enforcer, every scientist, every company that had profited from the pain of innocence. To do this, they needed access to the central comms array, located on a secure platform orbiting the capital world. It was guarded and watched, but not unbreakable. The Flame would strike there in full force, risking everything to deliver the final blow to a lie that had lasted for too long. Adam stood before the crew of the Flame ship, preparing to lead the mission. His voice steady, his words simple. This is the moment where we rise, not as victims, not as rebels, but as truth bearers. We are not ingredients, we are not shadows, we are not silent, we are flame, and we will burn the darkness away. The engines roared, and the stars opened wide once again as the ship turned toward its final target, carrying within it the weight of pain and the fire of justice. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would come next. The stars above the capital world glowed with a strange calm, as if they sensed what was coming, and the central comms array floated in silent orbit, unaware that the truth was already on its way. The Flame ship moved like a shadow, wrapped in signal cloaks and guided by old codes, bought with sacrifice and risk. The crew inside stood ready, not for war, but for revelation, not for power, but for justice, and in their hearts burned the fire of all those who had vanished, whose names had been erased, whose voices had been silenced by greed. Adam stood at the front of the ship, his eyes fixed on the looming structure ahead. Its walls gleamed with polished steel, its towers lined with blinking lights, its corridors filled with guards and machines, designed to keep secrets inside. But now those walls were no longer strong enough to hold back the truth, because truth had grown larger than fear, stronger than silence, and brighter than gold. The ship docked with precision, no alarms, no resistance, the entry code still valid from a time when corruption trusted itself too much. The team moved fast, disabling security locks. Spreading through the platform like quiet wind, they reached the main control chamber, where the core of the broadcast system rested, a circular room filled with screens, cables, and the pulsing heart of communication that connected every world under the council's reach. Technicians inside panicked, but the Flame used no violence, only commands backed with data that could no longer be denied. Adam stepped forward, inserted the final data key, and activated the full stream mode across every frequency, every station, every planetary feed, and every personal device. The transmission began with silence. Then an image appeared, the logo of the Trade Council torn in half, followed by the words, "You were never told the full truth." Then came the voices, the faces, the stories. Real people from every edge of the galaxy, each telling their piece of the hidden history. Families who had lost loved ones, refugees who had escaped the farms, survivors rescued from stasis, scientists who had once worked in the Nectar trade but turned against it. Their words came not in screams but in quiet truth, each one striking harder than any weapon. Then came the evidence files, contracts, trade logs, secret memos between council members, messages from Earth officials who had agreed to look away in exchange for wealth, all laid bare for the galaxy to see. Names were named, details exposed, no more rumors, no more doubts, only cold, undeniable proof that the most respected leaders had built their power on human suffering and called it order. Crowds gathered across planets, watching in silence. Some wept, some shouted, some fell to their knees in shock, and others simply turned their eyes to the sky, knowing that something had changed forever. Military ships stood still, unsure whether to follow their orders or join the people in the streets. Protests exploded into action buildings, once feared now covered in signs and banners demanding trials. Demanding truth, demanding that this darkness never return. The Trade Council collapsed within hours, some fled into deep space, others were arrested by their own forces. Courts formed faster than ever before, new laws passed with unity unseen in generations. Leaders who once spoke only in measured words now cried apologies and begged for forgiveness, but the galaxy had already decided it would no longer be ruled by shadows. Adam watched it unfold, not from the stage, but from the window of the Comes Array. Standing beside Tula and the rest of the Flame, they had not won a war. They had broken a silence. They had not claimed victory. They had given the galaxy back its voice, and that voice would never again be quiet. In the days that followed, the Flame helped lead a council made of survivors, advocates, and reformers. A new body built not for control, but for balance. Earth rejoined the galactic community, not as a quiet member, but as a symbol of resistance. The farms were dismantled. The trade destroyed, the process banned forever, and any attempt to rebuild it faced swift justice. Adam returned to Earth with his sister, who now walked slowly but stood tall, her strength quiet but unshakable. Together, they visited the places she remembered and the places she had once dreamed of seeing. They planted a tree in the center of a memorial garden, where the names of the lost were written in light and air and water flowing. Together in a circle that never ended, he stood before gathering of young students at a rebuilt learning hall and told them the story, not with rage, not with pain, but with honesty. He told them how silence was dangerous, how looking away was the first step to cruelty, and how even one voice can break a wall made of fear. He told them they must remember not just what happened, but why it was allowed and how to make sure it never returned. Stars still held their secrets and the galaxies still turned, but now there was light where once there was only hunger. Humans were no longer seen as weak or useful. They were seen as brave, as resilient, as the spark that reminded the universe of something it had forgotten for too long, that life was not a currency, that fear was not flavor, that every breath held value. In the silence that followed his last words, a single child raised a hand and asked quietly what happened to the fire, and Adam smiled gently as he replied, "It never died. It lives in all of you, and every time you speak the truth, you carry the flame forward." And so the story ended, not with a battle, not with a crown, but with a garden where names grew like stars and where truth walked freely under skies no longer owned by shadows. The end.